Welcome to the Tactical Business Podcast. I am your host, Wade Skalsky, and today we are meeting with Rob Pincus of Avidity Arms. Rob, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, man. Beautiful day down here in North Carolina. I was out at the test range earlier, and now I get to have a chat with you about tactical business, all business aspects, I guess, of what we're doing.
Yeah, well, we can go a little business, we can go a little firearms, we can talk a little bit about hunting in North Carolina. So we got a lot of different ways that we can go. But so let's start a little bit with where, I know that you've been in the industry for a while. We like to, us older grizzled guys like to say that we have experience, right? And so walk me through a little bit about how you got into firearms as a business, and then kind of how you got to where you are now.
All right. So yeah, I've been in the industry. I say that my first SHOT Show was 1997. So I've been in the industry for 26, 27 years. Started doing marketing, promotions, sales stuff, some marketing and sales consulting. And I was also doing a lot of promotion through charity events. So I was running charity events, and I would go to SHOT Show to meet with potential sponsors, potential people who wanted to get involved in these events to raise money for different charities, and mostly around the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast. And that, at the same time, I was working in the private security business, doing law enforcement as a reserve deputy. Ended up going into law enforcement full time in the late 90s. And honestly, public sector stuff and me just don't take. I don't know, too much bureaucracy, too much admin. And after a few years, I ended up leaving full-time law enforcement in 2001. And by then, I had been teaching a lot more, teaching inside of law enforcement, teaching inside of the executive protection world, and teaching private sector. And I really enjoyed that. That was really my passion. So I left full-time law enforcement in the summer of 2001 to become an instructor, not really sure how I was going to make that business thing work. And then, of course, 9/11 happened, and the entire landscape of private sector training changed dramatically. And the business was off and running pretty quick. Did a lot of cool things in that space for a long time, and ended up becoming, again, like a consultant, marketing, promotion, sales, an educator, did TV shows, books, a lot of training DVDs, started a streaming educational service called Personal Defense Network. And all of it involved a lot of working, obviously, with gun companies and product companies, accessory companies, not just to help them move their wares, but also to help them make their wares better for our students. As I started writing curriculum and certifying other instructors, working with major organizations like USCCA and others that use my curriculum, more and more access to students means more and more feedback for people who design products. And of course, eventually that led to me wanting to design my own products, and including a firearm. And in 2023, we started shipping the first Avidity Arms PD-10s, 9mm single stack, very thin gun, kind of informed by a couple of decades on ranges about how people's hands and guns interact, and what I think will serve people well as a defensive carry gun. And now we're expanding from that gun into other things with Avidity Arms as well. And I think I've done almost every hat you can wear in the industry, one way or another, over that 27 years.
So, and I think so is this the first, so in 2023 was the first time that you started to manufacture a product in terms of a firearm, right?
In terms of the firearm, yeah. So I've been a consultant. I've got that cool NRA award up there for some work I did, helping bring another firearm to market here in the US. A lot of other products. I've done a few of my own products. In fact, the PD-10 wears some sights that I designed with AmeriGlow over a decade ago, and we have SIG style cuts on our slide. So the the claw sight, which is an emergency manipulation, concave front service, blacked out, really wide rear notch, paired up with their Loomis Square. This one happens to be tritium. The ones we ship with the PD-10 are a tritium insert on the front sight. So like those sights are a product that I had developed, said 10, 12 years ago. Now they're on my gun. But this is the first time I've brought a firearm to market. And Avidity Arms, while it's been an idea, and we've been shooting prototypes now for almost a decade, that idea of Avidity Arms bringing something to market's been around. We're only about 14 months into shipping guns.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And the reason why I ask is because I love to geek out on manufacturing problems, right? Because it's one of those things where people do not realize the leap it takes to go from, I have an idea in my brain, to, oh, here's an actual physical product that I can legally sell, right? And all those steps that are in between there. So I know that you have done consulting and you've been involved in that process. before, but were there any surprises this time when it was your own process, right? So was it something where you're like, oh, I didn't even think about this, even though you had
Yeah.
consulted on it before?
So many things. Like the way I describe it, because I was not in the manufacturing side at all. Like I didn't know, I wasn't really a mechanical guy. Like I didn't grow up like helping my dad fix the car in the front yard kind of stuff, right? My dad was like a call the mechanic kind of guy. So I have learned what I've learned about making things and being more mechanically inclined as an adult. But the difference between design and prototyping, what I would throw in there, fabricating, making something that works, getting some parts from vendors and then making them work together with like Dremels and files and lubrication and stuff like that. And then as you said, the leap from that kind of stuff. People have been shooting prototypes of the PD-10 since 2014. It took us until 2023 to be able to ship a product. And that product has been refined. The processes by which we make the parts, the parts themselves have been refined over the last year. And the guns we're shipping now are actually, I think, significantly noticeably smoother and just kind of more user friendly than the guns we were shipping even at first. And as you said, you said it really well. Going from that idea, I think everybody has some sense of from an idea to a product is a big leap. What I was surprised by from a working pre-production prototype to a product in people's hands and in the stores, that leap is way bigger than I think a lot of people give it credit for.
Well, and I think, the gun community, and I don't think anyone will disagree with me on this, has a lot of strong opinions about things, right? So like if you go to the range and you shoot a gun, you're going to be like, oh, I like this or I don't like that. And so what went into the thought process of making the product? Because I know for you, you probably have like a personal preference, right? But maybe your
Right.
personal preference for the firearm doesn't translate to a larger audience. You know what I mean? So did you
Yep.
kind of balance that? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Did you
I
balance
think
that
so,
personal
yeah.
preference with what you think the market's going to want? Like, how did you approach that problem?
Well, I see three things. I see my personal preference, like what I want. I see what the market wants, and that, of course, is kind of fickle and finicky and trendy and often kind of misunderstood. I'd like to circle back to that a little bit. And
Sure.
then the where I landed is what do I think my students need?
Hmm.
So who are my students, right? I mean, I obviously I knew we were talking about different parts of the business, right? Like books, right? I've written 9 books, published 9 books, some through publishing companies, some self-published for our instructor team, some through a couple through USCCA. I mentioned before they use my curriculum as their defensive shooting fundamentals program. DVDs, published over 100 DVDs. We've done the TV shows on Outdoor Channel. I produced, appeared in, whatever, guested. So I've reached a lot of people. But on the range, right, thousands of people a year, I get to watch their hands on guns like really closely, right, and coach them through how to achieve the results that they want to achieve, or at least achieve what I think they can in the time we have together, and then give them a path to improve or maintain their skills moving forward. And these are life and death skills. If it's Navy SEALs, Green Berets, cops, moms at home with kids, dads carrying a gun under the hoodie when they're at the mall with their families, people just wanting to protect themselves with guns that they stage in their workplace or their home. This is life and death stuff. So it's stuff that I've really taken pretty serious and I get passionate about, right? So I'd say like, this is what I think you should do. And maybe the person next to him on the range, you should do this. So it's kind of one of those A way, V way things. I think there's my job as an educator is to give somebody the way I think they should do it. And it may not be what I am going to do. It may not be what the person next to them is going to do. Some cop's going to do, a military guy's going to do, but that person, here's what I think. You're paying me to tell you, here's what I think. So I have the same opinions and those strong opinions you mentioned about the guns. And for years, it'd be like, here's 3 or 4 brands, this range of models, find the one that fits your hand the best and that appeals to you aesthetically and go with that. Because I've seen, at this point, thousands, there's a few guns I've seen for over a decade, right? Like the XD series, the M&P series, obviously the Glock mid-size series. Then there's other guns that are newer designs, or I haven't seen as many of them, like the Canik guns, right? Canik guns have only been around for a few years, but they run great. We see them in students' hands. So I can say to people like here's these 4 or 5 different brands. Here's the range of guns. Find the one that fits your hand the best. And that's really the key is a gun has to fit a person's hand or you're fighting, the anatomy and the mechanics coming together. So what I wanted to do with the PD-10 was design a gun that was going to fit as many hands as possible right out of the gate. So take people who actually carry guns, who are actually going to practice and train, try to fit as many hands as possible. And it creates a unique, I think truly unique on the market set of dimensions. So the gun, looking at it from this perspective, it's a mid-sized gun, right? It's like a Glock 19-ish kind of size gun. But from this perspective, it's more like you can see in front of my shirt a little bit better. It's more Glock 43-ish. It's significantly thinner than like a Hellcat or a 365 or even a Glock 48. And we built it around a metal magazine. And so because it was built around a metal magazine, we end up with a gun that's very thin, and the contouring up around the top of the grip going around the trigger, that thinness and the contouring mean that people with short fingers, short thumbs, or just generally small hands can fit on this gun and control it and get a proper good fit at the back of the gun up high, you know, to a deep undercut, and really get a comfortable feeling on the gun. But the width from here, this width from front to back, depending on where you measure it, is more of a full size, a standard size. This is not thin. It's not a broomsticky kind of gun. It's not a subcompact stagger stack kind of squarish gun. It's a gun that has a really nice curvature to get the hand deep up where the recoil, where the energy is coming back. Small hands, short fingers can actuate all the levers and buttons, the slide stop, the mag release, and the trigger. But a large hand or long fingers don't get lost on the gun like you see with a lot of the really, really small guns. And it's very rare in the market that you see a very thin gun that isn't also generally very small. So I say this is a mid-sized gun that allows you to get a good full grip. And it appeals to a lot of people when they put it in their hands, and it shoots really well for them. So it's a very shootable gun, fits a lot of hands. And obviously the slimness, a 0.9 inch wide slide, again, like 20% slimmer than some of the stagger stack subcompacts that are out there. RMR type, well, RMSC type cut, 407, 507K. So it's cut for red dot. The red dot cut actually integrates with these sights. You don't need to get suppressor height sights, things like that. So I wanted to fit as many hands as possible, be as shootable and carryable as possible, but also be fully featured. Right. And not cost $1,000. So those were kind of my parameters, right? Not necessarily like I do carry one of these. Obviously, I didn't want to build a gun I wouldn't want to carry, but it wasn't just what does Rob want? And it also certainly wasn't what does the market want? Because I said, I think that can be really finicky, and it can also, the hype of what the market wants, it doesn't always reflect the wholesalers' reports of what's actually in stores and what's actually selling.
Right. Well, and then you have a danger in firearms too, where you can get too nichey, right? Like we get in these conversations sometimes with my co-host who I talk to with sometimes, John, I like to make fun of him about, he doesn't really like the 1911, but he kind of secretly does, but he won't say it. So there's a very like deep subculture for that gun, but you can't really build a business on that gun. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, I guess you could.
See, you say that's and you're hitting the nail right on the head. And this is what I think when I say the hype of what's trendy, right, or what people want is not really reflected in the sales numbers. I mean, people tell me all the time, Rob, why would you come to market with a single stack gun in 2024? It's all about stagger stacks now. People want higher capacity. And we get it. You designed the gun like 8 years ago, but 8 years ago, there wasn't even a Glock 48. Glock 48 came out and they kind of stole the thunder on a single stack 10 round. And now you've missed the boat. It's like, well, I see a lot of Kimbers in your display, sir. Like there's a lot of single guns still being sold. The most popular gun in Q1, I just saw the wholesalers report, the most popular gun in Q1 of 2024, the most popular semi-automatic handgun is the Glock 43X. It's a 10-round gun with a shorter barrel that makes it harder to shoot fast than this is, and it's wider than this is. And it's the most popular gun out there. And yet, the number one pushback I get when we try to get this into a store right now from a business side is, everybody wants stagger stacks, and I get it. The Shield magazines are awesome. They take that Glock 48 frame, and the 43X is really the 48 frame, and they make it a 15-round gun. But Glock's selling a heck of a lot of them with 10-round plastic mags, wider than the gun really needs to be. And that sort of flies in the face of what the top line is when people say, what's trending right now? I mean, bolt action guns are outselling ARs, and lever action guns in Q1 of 2024 are outselling bolt action guns because so many of those got brought to the market at SHOT Show. So I think it's when you start getting into the business details, what's trendy and being talked about a lot on the internet may not actually be what's selling. That doesn't necessarily make it easier to sell something that's off trend, but I think it's an important warning to people getting into the business. Don't just chase what people are talking about on the internet, because by the time you actually get to market, they're probably going to be talking about something else. And that probably doesn't have any bearing on the long-term success of your company anyway.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a really good point, and I try to draw people's attention to this. So I write in the firearms industry, right? So I ghostwrite for different people in the vertical, and I can tell people it's like I look at the internet searches, right? So like I know what the large volume of internet searches are, what the questions that people are asking, and they're top of the funnel entry level questions for normal human beings, right? Like if you start to get in these real niche conversations about your normal person has no clue what a double stack versus a single stack is, right? They're like, I don't want anyone to know that I have a gun. Okay. So like, great. Give me my second mag. That's my backup mag. Let's put 15 rounds, 16 rounds, whatever. Put up, give me a big 30 drum in my belt. I don't give a shit. Right. Like let me have a lot on the second one, but I want to have it concealed. Give me, and give me a single stack and then it's concealed. And then I'll work. If I need more bullets, I'll just go get it. And they may not, like your operator people are like, oh, well, they don't care. Normal enter level people who are just going concealed don't care about that. One of their biggest concerns is how do I conceal the gun so no one knows that I'm carrying it? And I think, so I do think there is a huge market for what you're talking about. And I think your analysis of how are the most amount of people that are going to be able to hold this gun, I think that's really, I didn't know you had designed the gun that way. And I think that's actually kind of genius because I'm 6'4.5" and I've got big hands, but I could give that gun to my wife, and the way that it's designed, we could both use the same gun. Right.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And as a small company, I need like if 4,000 people a year get it, cool. Right. Like I'm not trying to sell 40,000 a month like some companies are, right? I'm not trying to sell even 40,000 in a year. So my company can grow. Maybe we'll be doing that in a decade. But right now I need the instructors. Obviously I've got this great network of instructors who understand, the programs that I've taught and the programs that they now teach. This gun is obviously aligned with the way we teach people to shoot and what we recommend for gear. So we're getting a lot of traction in kind of one of those small niches, the niches of people that I think really understand, as you said, like the practical need to carry a gun comfortably enough and conveniently enough to be prepared for this worst case scenario, but not necessarily the guy who's going to, cosplay his way through a different training class every month with gear that he'll never actually wear in public or, use ever. But he's developing skills, not that he's not doing defensive shooting classes, but he's doing it with, plate carriers and stuff. And that's just really not our audience for our training or for the Avidity Arms pistol.
Well, and the thing is for concealed carry, for example, if it's not comfortable and you feel at all uneasy about it in any way, you're not going to carry it. And so it defeats the whole purpose. And so if you can have a gun that you feel comfortable in concealing, right? That's step one of concealed carry. And I think what's great about kind of like with your gun is that really does meet that need. And I think also too is you might have people. So you have your entry level people who you're teaching them on the range. They're learning about the gun. They're like, okay, I feel comfortable concealed carrying this. But then you're going to have your guys who shoot every type of gun that are going to fall and say, hey, I like this gun for it's just as a good fit or for whatever. So you kind of get the best of both worlds that way. Did you kind of think about that through the design, or did you say I'm just going to focus on this one, like you said, like kind of like the fit the most hands, and then there'll be these sort of these unintended benefits that I'll discover down the road and not worry about it?
Yeah, it very much was focused on fitting the most hands, being the right balance of shootable and carryable. And then obviously the reliability is a given, right? If I'm going to bring a defensive gun to market, it has to be reliable. So those were the original design points. And then like original design, right? Go back 8 years ago. I just don't think the market was there where optic cuts were incredibly important to come to market with, nor was I recommending people entertain the idea of putting a red dot on their gun, because back then you were like doubling the cost of the gun to put a decent red dot on a pistol. And I think there's a very narrow window where that really helps someone in a defensive shooting situation. Now you fast forward coming to market in 2023 without an optic cut, at least an optic cut version, is kind of silly, because now the market A expects it, a large portion of the market expects it, and B, there are some very, very affordable red dot optics out there that you can get for $200 or less that you should be perfectly comfortable with in terms of having on your defensive gun if you've made the choice to have a red dot. So then it becomes, okay, if we're going to have an optic cut, I need it to, I don't want somebody to have to buy the optic and buy the sights. So I need to get this to integrate with the sights that we're already putting on there, because one of the reasons we picked that set of sights is we don't want to sell a gun where people are going to have to immediately spend $50 or $100 to upgrade their sights.
I wonder what industry leader you're talking about. My first,
right.
my guns. So yeah.
Right. So it's like so those things have
Hold on,
happened.
let me go grab this. Let me go grab this smock over here. Hold on, let me get this smock. All right, go ahead.
I carried a 48 with shield mags up until the time that this gun was ready for production. And when this gun became ready for production and we had the insurance and all the stuff in place, obviously I switched over to this gun. But nothing wrong with those guns, but you have to know that there's flaws. Well, I'll give you an example. Like, here's one of the things that just incredibly frustrating as an educator guy in this space and someone with Personal Defense Network, where we're trying to help people market good quality products to people. When a major gun company, almost all of them, markets a gun as a defensive carry gun, the newest, latest, greatest model, and they bring it to market with zero holster support. And it happens far too often. If you know the industry, you know that this is a thing that happens. New guns out, nobody's got a holster for it. And it's like, why? Like, you have these people's phone numbers. They're making holsters for 17, 18, 29 other guns you make. Like, why aren't you talking to the holster companies so that a guy like me doesn't have to deal with the person shows up with the newest, greatest gun and they're taking it seriously. They want to get training with it, but they're in an Uncle Mike's number 4 because they can't find a decent holster for it out there. And it's in a few months they'll be out. So one of the things I'm really proud of is when we actually were at SHOT Show saying retailers could order the gun. 2 weeks before we started shipping the gun, you could go to G-Code and get one of 2 different models, 2 of their best models, the Synchron and the Phenom. Now they have the Paradigm holster also fits the PD-10. Tac Rig, I've got one of the Tac Rigs up here behind me. I think it's tucked in right there. Tac Rig had their shell, which goes onto a whole bunch of different outside the waistband, inside the waistband configuration. JM4 Tactical, leather wrapped Kydex holsters, and of course crossbreed, cold war concealment, moms who carry it. Then the CYA Armory. We have so many holster companies are on board now, but we launched with 3 legit holster companies that were ready to ship guns when we were ready to ship holsters, and we were ready to ship guns with 5 different models. And I think that's the kind of thing that, to me, that's just low hanging fruit that this industry needs to do better. Quality sites. Yeah, great. I get I believe me, I understand the idea that I could ship it for $10 more profit if I put plastic sights on it, and then I could sell these sights for $40 and net $50 on the website. But to me, I'd just rather, especially at this point in our growth, establishing ourselves, I'd much rather sell a gun that has quality sights. We'll take an optic where you can use these sights and make sure you have holsters that you can wear this gun comfortably and feel confident with it as a defensive tool.
Yeah, well, and I think that's great, because I think, and I have this conversation a lot where, yes, you have a passion for something. Yes, it's great that you did this, right? But the business of firearms is different than the passion of firearms, which is different from the teaching of firearms, right? And so you have to be able to be successful to be able to kind of integrate all 3 of those things, because a lot of people don't really want to put it a lot of your beginners need to learn on old timey, battleship iron sights, right? Like basically. And so I didn't even put an optic on my gun, on my everyday carry gun for 2 years. I just shot iron sights for 2 years, because I was like, I got to make sure I know how to do these before I do anything else. And then, like you said, and then I made sure it was co-witness, because what if your sights break or whatever? And so I think that's really, really smart. Now, do you think that you developed that perspective over time in your business because of all the consulting that you did, or do you, in terms of in the firearms industry, or did you think that philosophy comes from more of a pure business side somewhere?
Oh no, everyone that I work with will assure you I have no pure business side whatsoever. It really, you talk about the passion and the business are different, but for me, the way I run my businesses, it really has to always come back to that foundation of the training company. The training company is there to educate people. And there are people there are people who's at the extremes, right? If you look at the bell curve, there's going to be people on either end who this gun isn't going to work for. Did I aim for the biggest piece of the pie? Yeah. Why? because I wanted to be able to serve the biggest piece of the pie of, again, the built-in kind of customer audience, the students, right? The people that are actually showing up at the range with me and my guys anyway. So there's a business savvy to how do you do that. But for me anyway, it has to be grounded in the passion and the interest. And, when I first sat down, actually my partner who owns the manufacturing facility that I partnered with here in North Carolina, one of our early meetings, we sat down with some of his team and we were talking about kind of the next things we would do after the PD-10 was on the market. And there were 5 or 6 things on the table, and it was, which one would make the most sense. I had to understand manufacturing better. I had to understand more what's going on. Like I keep pointing over here because on the other side of that door is our factory floor. I have to understand what's going on out there more to know where the profit margin, the R&D, how much can we kind of reuse of what we've learned making the PD-10. And they also need to understand that just because it's the highest profit margin doesn't necessarily mean it's where we want to go. There has to be a defensive aspect, I think, to all of our products, at least at this stage. And the other thing is that there has to be like a fun factor, I call it, right? I have to actually want to do it because otherwise it's going to be one of the other 10 businesses that I'm involved in or I own or mine or I run that are going to get my attention that day. Like there's got to be a fun factor. The AR, like we're coming out with an AR style firearm. There's one of them up here on the wall behind me. Really good example of that. We could have launched this company and started generating revenue with a AR style rifle long before we brought the PD-10 to market. And in this building, they haven't ever done a firearm like start to finish before, but they had been making uppers and lowers for some other companies. So basically we could just turn that machine on, right? Put that program in the machine, pump out lowers and uppers, mark them with Avidity Arms markings instead of other companies, and we could be selling ARs. But I was vehemently against it. Like I had no interest in being another AR company. My passion was bringing this gun to market and building a gun that was unique and specific to the design. So after the gun was on the market, revisiting things and saying, okay, well, where else are low-hanging fruit opportunities to generate revenue? The ARs came back up in the conversation, and I still didn't want to be an AR company. So what we did was we took an idea that I had played around with through some 3D printing and private gun making stuff, as well as like some dremeling, this internally funneled magazine well. Started looking around, talking to some people that know way more about ARs and AR manufacturing than I do. And nobody had ever done that before. And I really didn't know why, and nobody asked really knew why either. So I said, okay, what if we could do an internal funnel around the channel, the back of the magazine, to give us a little bit more leeway, a little more forgiveness in the angle at which we can start inserting the magazine and have it funnel in without expanding the external dimensions of the mag well, and in fact, reducing the external dimensions so that, and a lot of people have done this, we relieve some of this area here, whether it's a window or a relief cut, so that people, if you do have a malfunction, it's easier to get some pressure on that bottom round of a complex double feed situation. So we relieve that. That left us a lip in the front, which means when the magazine's coming to the gun from our belt, carrier, pocket, wherever it's coming from, it's going forward, hits that edge, and then rocks up into the gun. So that was kind of interesting. Like if nobody's really ever done that before, we can do that, but I still don't want to be an AR company. So I called my friends over at Nemo and said, if I come to market with this lower, what if we did a collaboration, right? Because you've expanded your manufacturing capacity dramatically out there in Idaho recently. I know that. So are you interested in providing the upper for a collaboration Avidity semi-automatic rifle with my internally funneled magwell? And they were like, sounds great. Let's do it. So actually this week we're building and testing. I got some boxes over here. The first guns will be shipping out, the first ASARs, Avidity semi-automatic rifles, as the collaboration with Nemo just this week. So I'm still kind of keeping to my passion and my integrity, I guess, of I don't want to be another AR company, but I'm getting to work with Nemo. I'm getting to work with Black Collar with their cool grip, which is a great angle for a grip, much less compromising on the wrist than the A2 style 25-degree and 22-degree grips. Mission First Tactical, we're using their stock and their new translucent mags. Like I get to work with these great companies, and I'm bringing something new and unique to the market under the Avidity brand. So that's how Avidity is growing right now. Is are we looking at opportunities to make money? Obviously, we have to from a business standpoint, but we're trying to do it under that passion. And that's what Avidity is, right? It's enthusiasm, passion. It's being avid it's interest, it has to be that for me, or I'm going to zone out, get bored really quick.
Well, and that's your competitive advantage, though, is because if you take a look one of the larger manufacturers, right, there is so much inertia for them to be able to bring a product to market on top of the regular challenges that you will have of like, hey, I want to
Sure.
do this, right? And that's why when you're like a smaller company, you can take all sorts of chances, and some of them work and some of them don't. But you did it in a way that it's like something I always try to tell writers, right? Like everyone wants to write the Great American Novel, everyone wants to do that, but start with making money as a service, something that's like your bread and butter that you know that you can make money on, right? And that do it better than anybody else. And then you can start taking some chances, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what you guys did. Is like I said, okay, so we've got this pistol, we got it down. We've tested it for 10 years. We got it. We know it worked. We're shipping it. Okay, that vertical's kind of handled. Now, how do we take that stability and start taking some chances and look for some home runs, right? Let's take that single and that double of the pistol and try to take some home run swings. And I think that's a real competitive advantage for you guys to be able to do that.
And I'll tell you, the project that actually fits into exactly what you're talking about, which occurred, we shipped the first batch of these about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and that was the 30 Super Carry version. So the market and the industry have been really slow to sort of, I think, adopt or catch on to really what's happening with 30 Super Carry, maybe because of the timing when they launched and ammo was crazy expensive and there haven't been a lot of major companies that have come out with guns for it. We started shipping a 30 Super Carry version of the PD-10, like I said, about 3 weeks ago. And that's a chance, right? Everybody in the industry, it's been slow to grow, and that round might die. It might be another 45 gap, and I'm looking around and people are building 5.7s, right? Every company in the world's making a 5.7 now. That round's been dead for 20 years. And it's anemic as a civilian round for anything other than just a fun round, a novelty plinking round. And the 30 Super Carry is legit. Right? Like I did the ballistics testing. I looked at it really closely and I realized I hadn't given it enough attention a couple years ago when it was released. And we made a decision last summer to go ahead and bring to market a 30 Super Carry version of the PD-10, which answers some of the questions people have about why only 10+1. Okay, now we're 12+1 if you like 30 Super Carry. But I got a lot of warnings like, oh, you can't afford to do that. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. It's like, hey, man, I'm not suspending 9mm production. I'm just running a couple batches of slides and barrels that'll get me into the 30 Super Carry market. And so far, the response has been great. I think there's a group of people in the industry and the community that really understand what 30 Super Carry is, and they finally now have an option that they think is the gun that will fit them as a defensive gun with that round. So we're excited about doing more with 30 Super Carry. We have our 5-inch gun coming out, the double stack gun. But yeah, I think you're really spot on with, we needed to get our first thing kind of to the market in a very passionate, focused way, and then start looking for, okay, how do we take some chances here, make some money here, and maybe we make some money on the chances as well. And that'd be great.
Well, and when you have, with the 30 Super Carry, when you have a new sort of niche, you're going to have diehards, right? And so if you're the first person to provide to those diehards, then you lock them in on everything else, right? Because if for whatever reason, and that's what I love about firearms is they're so deep, but they can also be super individual as well. So if I'm like, for whatever reason, I just love this, 30 Super Carry. I just love the round. I don't know why it is. I must have it. Who has it? That person is going to be so happy, and they're going to be an evangelist for you. And I think again, that is, and I really want people who are listening to your example, thinking about starting a new business, is that the passion that you have and the ability to take chances is your biggest advantage over the SIGs and the Glocks, and because they don't have to take chances anymore. And nothing. I carry a Glock, so I don't have a problem. I'm not bad mouthing Glock, right? Well, now I have to check out your gun because this is why this is an expensive podcast for me, is because everyone have to check out their gun. But they have what they do, they're built in, and so they're not nimble. They don't have to be. But when a new manufacturer comes in like you, and you can be super nimble, you can create some really exciting stuff. And I think that is one of your biggest advantages that you have. Do you feel like from a manufacturing side that capacity is going to become an issue for you with your facility, or do you like, no, we can really have the ability to really ramp up? Or are you looking to the future in terms of strategizing for that in the future? Or is that you're like, oh, we'll just handle that later? What is your approach to that?
That is the strategy essentially, right? Like, we'll handle it later. I mean, it's a great problem to have, right? That's what everybody
Right.
says. Now the trick is there's a balancing act to that, because I've also, even in the few things we've done, we've thought we were going to bring it to market, or this accessory sooner. We thought we'd be able to, like the 30 Super Carry, we thought we'd be able to ship in February. We ended up not shipping till March. Not a terribly big deal, but I'm sure there were a few sales lost in the lack of momentum that was maintained from that initial announcement, and then being able to say, okay, they're shipping and they're available. So we have to be careful about over promising and under delivering. But like I said, go back to the idea of, if we could ship, if we had 4,000 people wanting to buy PD10s this year, we can handle that. And I think that that's probably near where we can handle. But because if one company, if one distributor showed up and said, we need 5,000 guns tomorrow, we're not the guy. We're not providing that. If some third world military decided they wanted the PD10 to be their sidearm, but they need 5,000 of them in June, not going to happen. We might be able to get you 500, and we can ramp up. And that's the trick, right? Is like ramping up. And I think it's got, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this because I can. I think this will work. It is important for people to know that it's not like Rob building these in his basement, right? Like
Right.
there's a lot of machinery out here. There's a lot of stuff going on, right? So there's a lot of room to scale as we expand. And not all that obviously is Avidity projects right now. Not all of it is PD10 stuff right now, but there's a lot of room just in this building to expand. And we do I would say 90% of the metal part. They are either manufactured here in this building, or they're refined here in this building. Like we order the magazine tubes from someone, a popular company that makes magazine tubes for a lot of people, but we change the geometry and we make the follower and we make the base plate, the frame and the base plate. We make the locking plate under the base plate. The base plate itself is injection molded, as is the frame. And that's done by another OEM supplier to a lot of major companies in the industry. Some of the biggest household names use the same guys up in New York to do their injection molding. So we don't do the injection molding here, and we don't do the coatings here. So our nitride coating or the anodizing on the aluminum parts, that's done outside of the building. Some of the pins and springs we buy outside of the building, but almost all of the metal work, the machining, the stamping, the EDM wire, we've got a 7-axis machine that does the slides. The barrels, we get barrel blanks brought in, but then we cut them down, turn them down, and put the chambers in. So we're doing almost all of the work here. Assembly and testing happens here. And I think that's important too. I know that there is a niche of our market who will buy that gun because it's made in America, because it's a small company, because it's all done in one building. No MIM parts, nothing comes over in a container. There's not a European company behind the name, USA, that relocated here. So we really are doing that because it's the right thing to do, and it's because that's how I want to do it. But I know that that's also a marketing piece that people like to hear about. It would have been maybe easier, and the gun would be cheaper in some ways if we had gone to MIM parts or outsourced some of this stuff from overseas. But it just isn't what we wanted to do.
Well, and I think there are some big players there's some big players in the space that prove that you can manufacture in the United States and make it work, right?
Sure. Yeah, I look at Daniel Defense. Like I remember, I used to write for the magazines in the 90s and stuff like that too. And I remember meeting Marty Daniel, when he had a handguard, that was like how he showed up. And I was with SWAT magazine, and where he's taken that company. And I remember I was down at I used to do a lot of work with them through Personal Defense Network, also with their guns, and being in their building that they stood up in Georgia when they had first opened it, and seeing that they really were doing like everything. Because that's one of the things with ARs is, well, everybody's buying stuff from that company, or everybody's buying parts from everybody else, and you're just slapping your name on the lower. We're making our own billet lowers here and marking them in the building. We're not on a variance, and we're building the guns here. But as I said earlier, I'm sort of proud of. I like the fact that we're using other companies, and we're not just trying to be another AR company doing it all ourselves. But most companies that are doing it all themselves really aren't. They're buying parts off the shelf all over the place. Daniel Defense is one that isn't. They're making parts. They're selling parts to other people to do stuff. So when I look at what Marty's done with his company in terms of scaling and growth, and Nemo is another. I mentioned Nemo. Nemo was outsourcing most of their stuff until maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, and now they have this incredible facility out in Idaho that they've built, where they're ready to sell us parts to build our guns, because they're building so much for themselves and are capable of so much. So I've watched a lot of companies here in the US scale and reach capacity that meant they could actually help other startups and help other people bring guns to market. And that would definitely be in the Avidity Arms long-term goal, is that we can be helping other companies as well.
Well, and I think they all did the same thing. You're talking like Daniel Defense, right? Where they started with one thing. They said, okay, we're going to do this one thing. And just because people need this, we're going to fill this void in the market. We're going to treat our people right. And, we're not going to, skimp on whatever. And we're going to see where it takes us. And I do believe in the market will reward that. If you make enough of those right choices along the way, you will keep growing and you will keep growing your customer base. And I think that's a super smart business approach, because you're looking at your customer base as a lifelong customer versus a transactional difference.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. In fact, our first release of the rifles we let people who already owned PD-10s put down a small deposit and reserve a serial number matched ASAR. So that's our first batch. The first ones that'll ship hopefully the end of this week, maybe next week, will be to those customers who were already customers of ours and are now saying, okay, we'll follow you into your adventure with semi-automatic rifles as well.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I mean, and I love the fact that you can just pick up the camera and go, here's the menu right next to it. Here's the menu. I live next to manufacturing, because people don't understand when you manufacture something, like the fires, sometimes literal fires, but most of the time just like metaphorical, like it is a process that needs constant attention for it to work properly, and for there to be a consistency in the manufacturing process is not an easy thing to do. And so that's amazing that you guys are doing that. So we're butting up against our time. I definitely want to have you on the show again. I'm going to have to check out your gun now, because this is what happens when I talk to someone about their guns, right? But how do people find? I'm sorry.
We can make that happen. We'll make pretty famous.
We'll figure something out. How do people find you, and if they want to check out the gun and also check out the new rifle, how do people find you?
AvidityArms.com is obviously where you're going to find out all the stuff about the guns. Instagram account's pretty active for Avidity Arms, AVIDITY Arms. Our Facebook has been restricted. Fighting with them right now about getting the Facebook back up. But Rob Pincus, Pincus, like I said, I've been in the industry so long. I mean, you know where the internet is, you can find it and find me. And whether it's the training company or personal defense network, any of the other things I'm involved in, eventually it will filter you back to the gun. The books are out there. Personal defense network, we really just kind of mentioned in passing. That's probably what most people would consider my core business. And personaldefensenetwork.com, we've got I don't know, over 1,000 pieces of free content. And then there's a paywall with the rest of the content if people are interested in some of the more advanced stuff, but kind of everything armed defense and personal defense, medical stuff, preparing for weather extremes, things like that. And we bring in other experts, not all Rob. We've got a team of probably over 60 this year. We'll break this number of 60 contributors to personaldefensenetwork.com, and really proud of that as well. So all over the internet, and I definitely would love to come back on the show and maybe update you about which one of these ideas took off and was the big home run, and which ones were just fun to have done, but we may not be doing them all forever.
No, yeah, I'd love to have you back on the show, because I think it's so valuable, because there are people that are going to be in different stages of their own businesses, just like you, right? Then some people now are in that testing phase and that thinking phase. And I think, or some people are in that starting phase, so that they can see, you going through these and kind of the growth, and some things work and some things don't. I think that's so encouraging. So definitely want to have you on the show again, Robin. Thank you so much for coming on today.
I appreciate it, Wade. Thanks.